Hey everybody, Mike the Gamer Guy, and welcome back to my... that should be fine. Bootleg video games. What's left to say?
It certainly feels like the topic has been discussed to death at this point. For a while now, my goal has been to give an alternative, positive perspective on pirate games and expose some of the greatest original productions from pirate developers. If you've been watching my videos, the players at this point should be intimately familiar to you. Hummer Team, Weishin, and Shenzhen Nanjing, for example. My focus on these developers and their games, while deserved, has led me to neglect discussing a large and in some ways just as interesting contingent of pirate games. One of my earliest exposures to bootleg games was Pokemon Quartz. I think this was the case for a lot of people. In the early 2000s, listings for this game were all over eBay, and I think it's safe to say it made it into the hands of plenty of soon-to-be very confused kids. Quartz features a lot of elements that would never make it into an official title, aside from the litany of grammatical errors. The script also skews more mature, and by more mature I mean they say shit, and there's weird out-of-place sex stuff. The game's also pretty notorious for being unbeatable due to a bug that shows up near the end of the game.
Now these aren't problems exclusive to Quartz by any means, but I bring it up because Quartz isn't an in-house production like we're used to on here.
Whereas Solmari was always intended to make it to market, it's likely that the creator of Quartz, Barrow, never meant for the game to be sold. He had simply been working on a ROM hack of Pokemon Ruby, which was discovered by pirates looking to make some easy money. I've always wondered why Quartz of all hacks was selected, given that there were better, less broken ones out there even back then. Furthermore, why was Quartz the one that was seemingly pushed hardest of all, when they had actually released at least one such better hack with Pokemon Shiny Gold already? I've been thinking about these questions again recently while playing through Super Mario World Revised, a really odd SMW ROM hack that was pirated onto cartridge in South America. Based on the title alone, you might assume that SMW Revised is a simple improvement hack meant to fix glitches or some other gameplay elements that needed improving. But just by looking at the cartridge label, it's clear that there's more going on.
The confusion surrounding what we're ultimately gonna get is actually pretty emblematic of the game itself.
According to the title screen, this hack dates back to 2000, making it one of the earliest SMW ROM hacks out there. Lunar Magic, the SMW hacking utility, released the same year. These two facts loom large over the game's design. Even in the demo, Mario follows the same inputs from the vanilla game, but along the way encounters wholly reconstructed terrains and even some Lunar Magic exclusive elements, namely the blue and red coins. By starting a new game, you're met with the familiar intro informing you that Peach is kidnapped and Bowser is at it again, but now with 300% more stuff. Why? Why not? The Overworld Map is mostly unchanged, especially in the first area, but a quick trip to Yoshi's house reveals that the creator, PMP, has been busy. Maybe too busy. In the original game, the purpose of Yoshi's house is to serve as a starting location where you can play around with the controls and be introduced to the plot involving Yoshi's stolen friends. In Revised, it's, well, a bunch of stuff. His humble home, now a towering mess of a structure surrounded by pipes that lead to seemingly pointless death rooms, and one that leads to a needlessly hard auto-scroller that awards you with a 3-up if you can beat it. There's also some Lunar Magic exclusive blocks, like these sideways bounce blocks with the messed up graphics. Despite all this stuff now packed into this level, it really doesn't serve any more of a purpose in terms of gameplay than the vanilla one does. If I could guess, it's meant to be an area where you can farm lives, but doing so would be incredibly inefficient given the length and difficulty of the autoscroller. Now, to give credit where it's due, the layout and size of the stage is radically different from the source material. However, if you crop the image a bit, you'll find that the original stage is mostly intact. Moving on to the game's first real level makes clear that this is true throughout all the game, even if the point can't be made as dramatically. No amount of endless spinning blocks, munchers, or flying yellow mushrooms can change the fact that this is fundamentally the same level with mostly the same beats. Take this sub-area for example. Rather than remove the original exit pipe, they just blocked it up so you have to take the one that they added. The level's skeleton remains unmistakable, and as the game goes on, this only becomes more obvious.
This does lead me to wonder if the intention behind the hack really is to revise Super Mario World, to improve the pre-existing design while retaining what makes the game.
Or, and I'm more inclined to believe this, the creator was just fucking around, got bored a quarter of the way through, and decided to apply a meaningless title to his production. In fact, there's reason to believe the creator didn't even playtest many of the levels. Let's jump forward to the Forest of Illusion. At this point in the game, levels have barely any real changes to them, the most notable being the result of graphical glitches that may or may not have been intended. Forest of Illusion 2 is much the same, though with one major difference. It can't be beaten, at least as far as I can tell. Toward the end of the level, Mario comes face to face with his most diabolical opponent to date, pieces of a red dolphin that crashed the game. As far as I can tell, this spot is totally impassable. What's worse is that if you're playing this on the original cartridge, it's back to the start of the game for you, as it doesn't feature battery-backed memory. That's why for this review, I've been playing a ROM dump I made in conjunction with my SD to SNES. So yeah, if you were planning to 100% this game, it's not going to happen. What exactly causes the game to crash isn't clear to me, but I'm guessing it's a sprite that doesn't play nicely with something about the level. We've already seen that this hack makes extensive use of the extra features afforded to it by Lunar Magic, and while normally that just manifests as the funny flying mushroom, there's also the flesh bomb, broken backward purple block, exploding nightmare background, and of course, game-crashing death dolphin. There's a lot to point and laugh at with this hack, owing in large part to its general amateurness. One of my favorite examples of that on the level design front is in Vanilla Dome 1, where you can fly through this wall that they didn't seal up properly. Something that's only possible, by the way, because they also added a pointless cloud section at the start of the level. It's just the perfect intersection of laziness and strange decision-making.
By far the level that saw the most change, for whatever reason, was Top Secret Area.
Even on the Overworld Map, now there's this cool vine that they never fixed properly, and it looks like it's supposed to go somewhere, but it doesn't. In the vein of Yoshi's House, this level is a life farm that's much too long and difficult to make use of, featuring a strict time limit, uncooperative watermelons, and a gray spiny that turns into a box. At this point, is there really much reason to keep pointing out the broken stuff in this hack? Like this Yoshi that kills you if you take it into the boss room. I think the point's been made. What we need to remember is that it's not PMP's fault that this was released on cartridge. Well, probably not anyway. It's not their fault that bootleggers saw value in their work. Though, it is confusing. There's actually another SMW hack that seems to have been put out around the same time, assumedly by the same people, though it doesn't seem to be as prevalent. It's called Super Mario Sunnyside World, and could two hacks be more different? Sunnyside World has some of the best aesthetics you could hope to find in a Mario hack, heavily influenced by, and in some cases lifted directly from Yoshi's Island. Every level present has been totally overhauled, even featuring what seems to be entirely custom blocks. The level design itself is also just really good. It's able to approximate that Nintendo feel without directly copying any of their existing levels or being overly difficult. Now, in fairness, Revised has one thing over Sunnyside World, in that it's a completed hack. As far as I can tell, Revised sports all 96 exits, whereas Sunnyside World is technically only a demo with 7 levels in total accessible.
That in mind, I think we can assume that the pirates only played maybe the first few levels, if that. But in that case, doesn't it become all the more baffling?
Even hacks like the Super Demo World titles, some of the earliest and probably most widely circulated hacks out there, make stronger first impressions on startup in comparison to Revised. Even from a marketing perspective, I would think that just about any other hack would seem more interesting to consumers than the one that implies it's just a basic update to the original. Pokemon Quartz, Super Mario World Revised, this Pokemon game that's actually just dogs. The thought process behind these releases will probably always remain a mystery, but regardless of intention, there's something to be celebrated. Quartz, Revised, and the many hacks like them are at their best a tiny bit better than mediocre. If it wasn't for the likely random selections made by pirates, these games would have been left to an even greater level of obscurity than the one that they already enjoy. Their release forced unknown numbers of people to engage with the, at times blurred, and at other times non-existent vision of a creator who never would have, or even deserved to have, their work seriously examined otherwise. These hacks also do a good job of highlighting how solid some elements of the original really are. Mario World's control is legendary. Even when faced with this kind of nonsense, Mario still controls like a dream. If you've ever wondered why this game's community has persisted for 3 decades, even with the advent of the Nintendo-sanctioned level creation tool Mario Maker, I think this answers it. Even the worst ROM hack from a level design perspective will still have those rock-solid, unbeatable controls. I think it's fair to say that a lot of this game's overt value comes from what it represents and how weird/obscure it is, rather than anything it does with regard to gameplay. An amusing conversation piece that will sit snugly on my shelf most of the time, but that I might come back to for a laugh or two at some point down the road. And you know what? That's just fine. Revised is essentially what happens when you send someone's lazy weekend to retail, and so it makes sense to treat it with all the reverence of a lazy weekend. This isn't a case of a hidden gem, or even something that overtly atrocious. It's Mario World after all, it really can't be that bad.
If one thing can be said, it exists.
Shoutouts to my Tier 4 patron Famicom Pony.